So, if you're an information security leader, you know you're on the front lines. But the battlefield, it's gotten a whole lot bigger.
It's not just about firewalls and antivirus anymore. Now you're navigating this crazy, complex maze of legal and compliance issues where one wrong turn can have huge consequences for your business. So let's break it down and find a path through it. All right, let's kick things off with a foundational question. When a data breach happens, is that a technical problem or a legal one? The real answer? It's not one or the other. In today's world, it is always both. The second a technical failure happens, it instantly triggers a legal crisis. Understanding that link is absolutely critical for every single person working in security. So here's our map for getting through this maze. First, we're going to talk about protecting what's yours, your company's digital assets. Then, we'll zoom out and look at the tricky world of global data rules, because our data is everywhere. After that, we'll focus on the human element, our responsibility to protect people's privacy. And finally, we'll put it all together and talk about how to build a real compliance framework that turns all these rules into action. All right, Section 1. Before we worry about the rest of the world, we have to protect our home base. This is all about defending your own organization's creations and its data. The stuff that is the very foundation of your business. We're going to look at the legal challenges that pop up when these assets are under threat.
After a security incident, things get legally complicated and fast. You're not just fighting on one front, you could be fighting on three. The first two are right here. You've got criminal law, which is where the government goes after the attacker for, hacking. Then there's civil law, where your organization might get sued by people who were harmed. But there's a third major player we have to talk about, the regulators, who can hit you with a whole other set of penalties.
And these are the big ones, the headliners of the cybercrime world. We're talking about fraud, ransomware that completely paralyzes your business, or massive identity theft. Your company doesn't just have a duty to defend against these things, you're often legally required to report them to law enforcement.
Look, when a breach happens, and let's be real, it's often a when, not an if, a clock starts ticking, a legal clock. Of course, the first thing you do is contain it technically. But look at step 3, notification. That's not just a courtesy, it's very often a legal mandate. There are specific, tight deadlines for telling people and regulators that their data might have been exposed.
Now, it's not just about protecting customer data. What about your company's own secret sauce? We're talking about intellectual property or IP. And yeah, people call it the crown jewels for a reason. This isn't something you can just lock in a vault. It's your source code, your unique designs, your business plans. In this day and age, it's probably your most valuable asset.
So how do you protect these crown jewels? Well, you have a few different kinds of legal shields. Copyright protects the expression of an idea, like your software code. Trademarks guard your brand identity, your logo. Then you get into patents for unique inventions, and trade secrets, which protect that confidential info that gives you a competitive edge. But remember, this is a two-way street. From a security angle, you've got to make sure your own software licensing is buttoned up so you're not violating someone else's IP.
Okay, so we've talked about protecting our own turf. But in today's world, data doesn't just sit in one place, does it? It zips across the globe in an instant, and that is where this legal maze gets a whole lot more complex, and the stakes get way, way higher.
And it all comes down to this really critical concept, data sovereignty. Simply put, it means that data is subject to the laws of the country where it is physically located. So think about that. If your customer is in France, but their data is sitting on a server in Ohio, that data is now subject to both French and American laws. And guess what? Sometimes those laws conflict with each other.
And if you get this wrong, the risks are huge. You could be facing massive fines for breaking a foreign privacy law you didn't even know about. You could get caught between two different governments demanding the same data. Your business operations could literally be shut down in an entire country. It is a high-wire act with no safety net.
Now, get this. It's not just the data that's regulated, it's the tools we use to protect it. It sounds kind of wild, but many governments actually classify strong encryption as a type of weapon. Because of that, they have really strict export controls on cryptographic software, all in the name of national security. You have to know these rules before you go deploying encryption tools around the world.
This all brings us to the most important piece of the puzzle, the human side of the equation. We're talking about privacy. This isn't about protecting corporate secrets anymore. This is about the fundamental rights of the people whose data you've been trusted to keep safe.
So, in the world of privacy law, you absolutely have to understand the difference between personal data and sensitive data. Personal data is basically anything that can be linked back to a specific person, a name, an email, even just an IP address. But sensitive data, That's a whole different ballgame. We're talking about health information, genetics, religious beliefs. This stuff is in a special category that legally requires the absolute highest level of protection.
I mean, just look around the globe. From Europe's GDPR to California's CCPA to laws in China and South Africa, we're covered in this patchwork of different privacy laws. And while all the details might be different, they share one common powerful theme. The organization that holds the data is the one that's accountable for protecting it and for respecting the rights of the person it belongs to.
And what are those rights? Well, here are the big ones you'll see pretty much everywhere. People have the right to ask you what data you have on them. They have the right to fix it if it's wrong. They have the right to ask you to delete it. That's the famous right to be forgotten. And they have a right to know who you're sharing it with. Your security and your IT systems have to be built to make all of this possible.
Okay, let's take a breath. We've got internal risks, global rules, privacy rights. How on earth do you manage all of it? Well, you can't just wing it. You have to build a framework, something that turns all these abstract rules into concrete, manageable actions.
And first, it's so important to know the difference between a standard and a regulation. Think of an industry standard, like from NIST or ISO, as a book of best practices. It's a great guide. A regulation, like GDPR, is not a guide. It is the law. It is mandatory, and if you ignore it, there are serious penalties. Knowing which one you're dealing with is step one.
A really strong framework is built on these 4 pillars. First, you have policies. That's just writing down your rules. Then you have contracts, which are the legal agreements that make your partners and vendors stick to your rules. Audits are the independent proof that you're actually doing what you say you're doing. And finally, governance. That's the leadership and oversight that holds the whole thing together.
And if you take away only one thing from our talk today, please let it be this. Good security is the foundation you need for compliance, but just being compliant doesn't mean you're secure. Compliance is the starting line, not the finish line. It's the minimum bar. Real security means going beyond checking a box and actively managing your real-world risks.
Which really brings us to the final crucial question. One you should be asking in your organization. Is your compliance program a living, breathing shield that actively reduces risk? Or has it just become a checklist, something to get through once a year? The answer to that question makes all the difference.